Astronomy lesson 5.5. All right, so yeah, look at it's Brad Pitt when he's old, but he's really young, but looks really old. So he's normal age guy playing an old guy, playing a really young guy. Okay, anyways, so stars kind of have this lifespan that they go through in different stages depending on the size or the material that makes up the star. So here's this nice little flow chart that kind of gives you the description of the many different ways that a star can go. So all stars, regardless of their size, are going to start off as this thing called a nebula. Nebula. And a nebula looks like this. This is the Horsehead Nebula because it looks like a horse. So this is a nebula. From there, depending on the material they're able to suck in, it goes towards something called a protostar. All right, protostar. So all that gas and stuff starts circling around in this deep point here, coming in super dense, and they're all starting to clump together in something called a protostar. Right? So not quite a star, but a protostar. And then it starts to heat up if it's going to become a star. If it doesn't get warm enough, so if it doesn't get to about 10 million degrees, then nuclear fusion can't happen. If nuclear fusion can't happen, then we don't get Back to the Future. No, then it won't become a main sequence star. Instead, it'll be called a brown dwarf, which is our failed star. So one of the misconceptions that go along with brown dwarfs or failed stars has to do with this planet called Jupiter. Maybe you've heard of it. You know, Roman, god of everything, and heaven and the sky. You know, they used to call him Zeus, biggest planet in our solar system. So some people think that Jupiter is really a failed star. And it makes sense. You know, it's really big compared to everything else in our solar system. And it's got a lot of gas, a lot of hydrogen, so kind of makes sense. However, let me show you a little scale model here. Here is our sun for scale, all right? Here we have a really low mass star right here, all right? So this is our sun, see? It's kind of this gray area over here. This is a really small star. Like, wow, that's small. And then here we have a brown dwarf, which is smaller than that, and then we have Jupiter. So it's kind of too small to really be considered a failed star. It was never going to be a star. It didn't have enough, even close to enough stuff. So sorry, you're still in the minors. My bad. But everything else is known as a brown dwarf. Cool. All right. If it does get hot enough, so if this protostar keeps spinning, keeps heating up, and reaches the optimal 10 million degrees Celsius, then nuclear fusion will take place, and you will get something called a main sequence star. All right, and depending on how much fuel, for lack of a better term, or material that makes up the star, depending how long it stays in main sequence is completely dependent on what it's made of. But pretty much, most stars are going to spend the majority of their life in this main sequence phase. Right? All right. From there, things get a little bit funny. Right? So from here, once a star has become a main sequence, things become a little bit funny. So where it goes from there, it's kind of up in the air, right? So we're in main sequence. Blue star, oh, so nice, right? So if we take a look here at our main sequence, there's our main sequence stars. We're going to start off as blue, then we're going to go yellow, and then we're going to turn red. And depending on the size of the star, we're either going to do one of two things. We're either going to go red giant,
Dad, what are you doing?
Or super red giant. I am giving a lecture on stars. All right, so if it goes uh, the standard way, depending on the size of the star, we'll go this way first. So we'll do red giant. Our star will probably go red giant. So what's happening here is the two forces that were holding the stars together start to really come back. Right, so nuclear fusion, it's producing a lot of energy, pushing things out. Gravity's trying to hold it in, but now gravity really can't hold that nuclear fusion back. Can't hold it back anymore. So it starts to swell up and expand that surface. So here's our sun. This is what's going to go to size-wise and become a red giant, right? So as it expands, it's further away from that nuclear fusion, so the surface starts to cool down, which gives it that reddish color, even though it's really big. From there, eventually, nuclear fusion won't be able to hold that surface anymore, and it will let go into what is called a planetary nebula. Planetary nebula, and I apologize, my handwriting bites. So this is that outer ring. Notice that reddish orange color, and then inside here is a nice hot center of a white dwarf. That's kind of like where the nuclear fusion was taking place, or the core of the star. So from there, our planetary nebula, we go to white dwarf. Yay! All right, so this white dwarf is super hot, right? It was nuclear fusion. It's having taken all this heat. So we're at white dwarf. From there, right, it's really small. It's really just the core left over from the star. It's starting to cool down, but it's still super hot. So if any other gases get pulled in, it kind of starts that whole nuclear fusion off, again, giving these things called nova. And this happens a lot of times when we have companion stars, so it kind of sucks in some of that because it's super dense. It sucks it in, causing these little explosions on the surface called nova. Not to be confused with supernova. These are just little explosions, the size of a planet or two. These are called nova. All right, from there, it'll eventually cool off into what we call a black dwarf, where it's no longer emitting any light. Aww, so sad. Unfortunately, this is only a hypothesis. We don't have any way of testing this because, as far as we know, the universe is not old enough to have any black dwarf stars. So we'll have to, come back to that in a few billion years and see if we were right or not. I don't know. So that's if we're a standard star with the standard amount of stuff, and we're in on this main sequence, and everything's good. Or if we're big, like really big. So if we go back to our main sequence here, let's say we're really big. So over here, big, right? So we're starting off pretty darn large. And we're outside the main sequence because we're just too darn big, even though we're technically in the main sequence of the star's lifespan. So if we're there, we have a lot of material. And instead of going to a standard red giant, we go to a super red giant. And you're like, well, how super? I saw how big the sun was compared to the other one. Well, hey, let's look at this. So here's our sun. Here's our super red giant. This is Beetlejuice. Hey, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Nope, he didn't show up. So, pretty big, right? You can't even see how big it is compared to our sun, right? Because it doesn't fit on the screen for scale. Not cool. From there, instead of just casually losing its outer shell, it's going to go boom, supernova. That supernova will either collapse back into a neutron star, which will give all kinds of X-rays and gamma rays, known as a pulsar, or it'll continue to collapse in something that is infinitely dense into a black hole, which can also give off X-rays. Those are known as quasars. All right, so supernova, boom. Beetlejuice is probably going to go supernova sometime in our lifetime, or already has, or has got another couple hundred years before it will, and we won't know either. But don't worry, Betelgeuse is far enough away that it's not going to affect us other than looking really pretty in the night sky. Okie dokie, artichoke. Talk to you later. Goodbye. Okay, really gotta go bye.